The dusty air hung thick with tension as Beatrice Daniels stepped off the stagecoach in Julesburg, Colorado, her hands trembling as she clutched the letter from Samuel Osborne, the man who would soon become her husband. The journey west had been long and arduous, but not nearly as painful as the life she'd left behind in Boston. It was September 1875, and like many women seeking a fresh start, Beatrice had answered an advertisement in the matrimonial news. Rancher seeks bride of good character and hardy constitution. Comfortable home and respectable life offered in exchange for companionship and domestic assistance. The words had seemed like salvation after her father's death had left her at the mercy of her cousin Edwin. Beatrice smoothed down her travel-worn blue dress, wincing as her fingers brushed against the bruises hidden beneath the fabric. The last beating Edwin had given her before she'd escaped was still fresh, the marks a painful reminder of what she was running from. She'd used the last of her inheritance to secure passage west, praying that Samuel Osborne would be a kinder man than her cousin. The main street of Julesburg bustled with activity despite the late afternoon hour. Men in dusty boots and worn hats moved purposefully between the general store, saloon, and other establishments that made up the heart of the frontier town. A few women in practical dresses hurried about their business, casting curious glances at the new arrival. Beatrice clutched her small valise containing her few possessions and scanned the faces of those milling about, wondering which one might be her future husband. The letter had said he would meet her, but there had been no description provided. "Miss Daniels?" The deep voice startled her, and Beatrice turned to find herself looking up at a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of the summer sky. His brown hair was neatly trimmed beneath his wide-brimmed hat, and though his clothes showed signs of hard work, they were clean and well kept. "Mr. Osborne?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Samuel Osborne. Most folks call me Sam." His gaze was direct but not unkind as he studied her. "Welcome to Julesburg. How was your journey?" "Long," Beatrice admitted, "but not unpleasant." The lie came easily to her lips. The truth was that every mile had been agony, her bruised ribs protesting each jolt of the stagecoach. Sam nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "I've got the wagon just down the way. We've got about an hour's ride to the ranch." He reached for her valise. "Is this all you've brought?" "Yes," Beatrice replied, reluctantly surrendering her bag. "I traveled light." A flicker of surprise crossed Sam's face, but he didn't comment. Instead, he offered his arm. "Let's get you settled then. You must be tired." Beatrice hesitated before placing her gloved hand on his forearm, half expecting him to grab her roughly. When he didn't, she allowed herself to be guided through town toward a sturdy wagon hitched to two well-kept horses. Sam helped her onto the wooden seat, his touch gentle as he steadied her. Beatrice couldn't help the sharp intake of breath as she settled onto the hard surface, her bruised body protesting. "Are you all right, Miss Daniels?" Sam asked, concern evident in his voice. "Yes, quite fine," she replied quickly. "Just a bit stiff from the journey." Sam's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press the issue. Instead, he climbed up beside her and took the reins, clicking his tongue to set the horses in motion. As they left the bustling town behind, Beatrice found herself studying her future husband from the corner of her eye. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30 years old, with strong hands that handled the reins with practiced ease. His profile was handsome, with a straight nose and firm jaw covered by a light beard. "The ranch isn't what you'd call fancy," Sam said, breaking the silence. "But it's solid and growing. I've got about 60 head of cattle, some chickens, 2 good milk cows, and enough land to expand when the time is right." "It sounds lovely," Beatrice replied politely, though in truth she knew nothing of ranching. Her life in Boston had been one of moderate privilege until her father's death had changed everything. "You should know," Sam continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "that I'm offering you a marriage of convenience, Miss Daniels. I need a wife to help with the cooking, cleaning, and such. In return, you'll have a home, food, and my protection. I don't expect," he cleared his throat, "anything more unless it's agreeable to both of us." Beatrice felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "I understand, Mr. Osborne. That's what I expected when I answered your advertisement. They lapsed into silence as the wagon rumbled along the dusty trail, fields giving way to rolling grassland dotted with sagebrush. In the distance, Beatrice could make out the silhouette of mountains against the darkening sky. There it is, Sam said finally, pointing ahead to a modest homestead nestled against a backdrop of cottonwood trees. Home. The ranch house was simple but well built, with a covered porch spanning the front. A barn and several outbuildings stood nearby, and in the distance, Beatrice could see cattle grazing in fenced pastures. It wasn't grand by any means, but it looked peaceful and safe. Two things she hadn't experienced in a long time. As the wagon pulled into the yard, a large dog with shaggy brown fur bounded out to greet them, barking enthusiastically. "That's Buck," Sam explained. "He's friendly, just noisy." Beatrice managed a small smile as the dog circled the wagon, his tail wagging furiously. Sam brought the wagon to a stop near the house and jumped down, coming around to help Beatrice. As he lifted his hands to assist her, she flinched involuntarily. Something flickered in Sam's eyes, recognition, perhaps, but he said nothing, simply offering his hands with palms up, letting her decide whether to take them. After a moment's hesitation, Beatrice placed her hands in his and allowed him to help her down. The movement sent a jolt of pain through her ribs, and she couldn't suppress a gasp. "Miss Daniels," Sam said quietly, still holding her hands, "if you're injured, I should know about it. I'm no doctor. But Mrs. Patterson up the road has some skill with medicines. I could fetch her if needed." "No," Beatrice said quickly. "No, thank you. I'm just tired. A good night's rest is all I need." Sam studied her face for a long moment before nodding. "All right then. Let me show you inside." The interior of the ranch house was simple but comfortable. A large main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a sturdy table, several chairs, and a stone fireplace. 2 doors led off the main room, which Sam identified as the bedrooms. "That one's yours," he said, pointing to the smaller of the 2 rooms. "I took the liberty of having Mrs. Patterson help make it up for you. There's a washstand and some shelves for your things. I'll sleep in the other room." Beatrice nodded, relieved that he didn't expect them to share a room right away. "Thank you, Mr. Osborne. It's very comfortable." "Sam," he corrected gently. "If we're to be married, you might as well use my given name." "Sam?" she repeated softly. "And I'm Beatrice." He nodded, a faint smile crossing his features. "Beatrice, are you hungry? I've got some stew keeping warm." The mention of food reminded Beatrice that she hadn't eaten since early morning. "Yes, thank you. Could I perhaps freshen up first?" "Of course. There's water in the pitcher on your washstand, and I'll bring your valise in." While Sam retrieved her bag, Beatrice slipped into her room. It was small but neat, with a narrow bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a pine dresser, and the promised washstand. A small window looked out toward the mountains, now silhouetted against the sunset. When Sam knocked on the door to deliver her valise, Beatrice thanked him and quickly closed the door. With trembling hands, she unpacked her few belongings, 2 dresses, a nightgown, undergarments, a hairbrush, and a small framed photograph of her parents taken before her mother's death when Beatrice was just 12. She poured water into the basin and washed her face and hands, wincing as she caught sight of her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. Her normally fair complexion was marred by a yellowish bruise along her jawline, mostly faded, but still visible if one looked closely. It was the bruises beneath her clothing that concerned her most, though the ones that still ached with every movement. Taking a deep breath, Beatrice smoothed her hair and rejoined Sam in the main room. He had set the table with 2 bowls of steaming stew and thick slices of bread. "I'm not much of a cook," he admitted as she took a seat, "but I can manage the basics." The stew was simple but flavorful, with chunks of beef, potatoes, and carrots. Beatrice realized how hungry she was as she took her first bite. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Sam spoke. "I thought we might get married on Sunday," he said. "The preacher comes to town once a month and he'll be here this weekend. Unless you'd prefer to wait?" Beatrice shook her head. "Sunday is fine. I have no reason to delay." Sam nodded. I've arranged for you to stay with Mrs. Patterson until then. She's the closest thing to a respectable lady in these parts, and it wouldn't do for us to be under the same roof before the ceremony." Beatrice felt a rush of relief, followed quickly by shame. This man was offering her a home, a name and protection, and here she was, glad to be away from him. "That's very considerate of you," she said quietly. "It's nothing," Sam replied. "Just doing what's proper." After supper, Sam showed Beatrice around the rest of the house and outbuildings, introducing her to the animals and explaining the workings of the ranch. Despite her exhaustion, Beatrice tried to pay attention, knowing this would soon be her home and these tasks her responsibility. As darkness fell, Sam hitched the horses back to the wagon. "I'll take you to Mrs. Patterson's now. It's not far, just over the next rise." The Patterson homestead was similar to Sam's, though somewhat larger. Mrs. Patterson herself was a sturdy woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair and kind eyes. "So you're the bride," she said warmly, taking Beatrice's hands in her own. "Sam's been fixing up that house for months, getting ready for you. You must be tired after your journey." "Yes, madam," Beatrice admitted. "It's been a long day." "Well, come in, come in. I've got a room all ready for you. Sam, you can bring her valise inside, then be on your way. You'll see your bride on Sunday." Sam complied, carrying Beatrice's bag to a small but comfortable bedroom. Before he left, he turned to Beatrice. "I'll come for you on Sunday morning, around 10. The service is at 11. "I'll be ready," Beatrice promised. After Sam departed, Mrs. Patterson showed Beatrice where everything was located and provided her with a clean nightgown. "It might be a bit large," she apologized, "but it'll do for sleeping." Once alone in her room, Beatrice undressed carefully, each movement causing pain. The bruises on her ribs and back had turned an ugly purple-black, and smaller ones marked her upper arms where Edwin had gripped her during their final confrontation. A soft knock at the door startled her, and Beatrice quickly pulled the nightgown over her head. "Yes?" "I've brought you some warm milk, dear," Mrs. Patterson called. "May I come in?" "One moment, please," Beatrice replied, making sure she was fully covered before opening the door. Mrs. Patterson entered with a steaming mug, but her smile faltered as she caught sight of the bruise on Beatrice's jaw, now more visible in the lamplight. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing as she handed over the milk. "Thank you," Beatrice said, avoiding the older woman's gaze. "You know," Mrs. Patterson said casually, "my husband wasn't always a kind man. When we first married, he had a temper, left marks on me more than once." Beatrice's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do," Mrs. Patterson replied gently. "Those winces when you move, the way you hold yourself so carefully. I recognize the signs." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes, but she blinked them back. "It wasn't Sam, if that's what you're thinking. We've only just met." "I know that, child. Sam Osborne is a good man, one of the best I know. But someone hurt you, and recently by the look of it." Beatrice's resolve crumbled, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, the mug trembling in her hands. "My cousin," she whispered. "After my father died, I went to live with him. He wasn't kind." Mrs. Patterson sat beside her, her weathered hand covering Beatrice's. "You're safe now. Sam won't hurt you, and your cousin is far away." "How can you be sure?" Beatrice asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her throughout her journey. "How do I know Sam isn't just like Edwin, once we're married?" "Because I've known that boy since he was 16, fresh off the wagon train with nothing but the clothes on his back and a dream of owning land. I've watched him build that ranch from nothing, through drought and blizzards and all manner of hardship. Not once have I seen him raise a hand in anger, even when he had every right to be furious." Beatrice wanted desperately to believe her. "I hope you're right." "I know I am. Now, drink your milk and get some rest. You've had a long journey, and the next few days will be busy ones." After Mrs. Patterson left, Beatrice sipped the warm milk and stared out the window at the vast expanse of stars. She'd come west seeking escape and safety. Now she could only pray she'd found it. The next morning, Beatrice woke to the sound of chickens and the smell of coffee. For a moment she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her. Then, the memories of the previous day came flooding back. She rose carefully, her body still aching but slightly less painful after a night of proper rest. After washing and dressing in her second dress, a simple gray affair that had seen better days, she made her way to the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson was at the stove, frying bacon. "Good morning, dear. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Beatrice admitted. "Thank you for your hospitality." "Nonsense. It's a pleasure to have company. My Arthur's been gone 5 years now, and it gets lonely out here sometimes." She set a plate of eggs and bacon before Beatrice. "Eat up. We've got things to do today." "Things?" Beatrice questioned. "Can't have you getting married in those travel-worn dresses. We need to see about something proper for a bride." Beatrice flushed. "I'm afraid I don't have the means for a new dress. What I have will have to do." Mrs. Patterson waved away her concerns. "Sam left some money, said to make sure you had what you needed. He's practical, but he wants things done right." After breakfast, Mrs. Patterson hitched her own wagon, and they made the journey into Julesburg. The town looked different in the morning light, less intimidating, but no less bustling. They stopped first at the general store, where Mrs. Patterson greeted the proprietor like an old friend. "Morning, Thomas. This here's Beatrice Daniels, Sam Osborne's bride-to-be." The storekeeper, a portly man with spectacles, smiled warmly. "Welcome to Julesburg, Miss Daniels. Sam's a good customer and a better friend. You're getting a fine husband." "Thank you," Beatrice murmured, still unused to the idea of being anyone's wife. Mrs. Patterson efficiently gathered fabric, ribbons, and other notions, consulting with Beatrice on colors, but otherwise taking charge. "Sarah Miller does the finest sewing in the county," she explained. "We'll head there next." The seamstress turned out to be a young widow with quick fingers and a quicker tongue. She took Beatrice's measurements, clucking sympathetically when Beatrice winced at the pressure against her ribs. "Fell getting off the stagecoach," Mrs. Patterson explained smoothly, giving Beatrice a pointed look that clearly said to stay silent. "City folk aren't used to our rough ways." Sarah nodded, accepting the explanation. "We'll have to work quickly to have something ready by Sunday, but it can be done. Something simple but elegant, I think." By the time they returned to the Patterson homestead that afternoon, Beatrice was exhausted but more hopeful than she'd been in months. The people of Julesburg had been uniformly kind, and everyone spoke well of Sam. "You're lucky, you know," Mrs. Patterson said as they sat on the porch, shelling peas for dinner. "Sam Osborne could have had his pick of girls from around here. More than one family has tried to catch his eye for their daughters." "Then why did he send away for a bride?" Beatrice asked, genuinely curious. Mrs. Patterson considered the question. "I think Sam's always been a bit of a loner. Came west on his own, built that ranch on his own. Might be easier for him to marry a stranger than court a girl whose family he's known for years." She paused. "Plus, there's the matter of his sister." "His sister?" Beatrice hadn't heard any mention of family. "Clara. She died about 5 years back. Her husband was a mean drunk, beat her something awful. By the time Sam found out and went to fetch her home, it was too late." Mrs. Patterson's voice softened. "I think that's why he's been so particular about finding a wife. He couldn't save Clara, but he can make sure he never becomes like her husband." The revelation sent a chill through Beatrice. No wonder Sam had looked at her so intently when she'd winced in pain. He recognized the signs because he'd seen them before. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah Miller worked miracles with the fabric, creating a simple but beautiful blue dress with white lace trim for the wedding. Mrs. Patterson showed Beatrice the basics of running a ranch household, from baking bread in the temperamental wood stove to managing laundry with limited water. On Saturday evening, Sam came to check on the preparations. He spoke mostly with Mrs. Patterson, but his eyes often strayed to Beatrice, who was setting the table for dinner. "Everything's ready for tomorrow," Mrs. Patterson assured him. "Your bride has a proper dress and Reverend Johnson is expected on the morning stage." "Good," Sam nodded. "I've invited a few neighbors for a small celebration after the ceremony. Nothing fancy, just some food and well wishes." "You'll stay for supper?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "If it's no trouble." Throughout the meal, Beatrice felt Sam watching her, his gaze thoughtful rather than intrusive. When Mrs. Patterson went to fetch dessert, leaving them alone briefly, he finally spoke directly to her. "Are you having second thoughts, Beatrice?" The question startled her. "No, why do you ask?" Sam shrugged. "It's a big step marrying a stranger. I wouldn't blame you if you were reconsidering." "Are you?" she countered, her heart suddenly racing. "No," he said simply. "I still think this arrangement can work well for both of us, but I want you to be sure." "I am," Beatrice said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I want this marriage, Sam." He nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Good. That's good." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Mrs. Patterson helped Beatrice into the blue dress, arranging her honey blonde hair in a simple but elegant style, adorned with white wildflowers. "You look beautiful," the older woman said, stepping back to admire her work. "Sam's a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Beatrice replied softly, "to have found such kindness when I needed it most." Mrs. Patterson squeezed her hand. "You deserve kindness, child. Don't ever forget that." They arrived at the small white church in town just as the Reverend Johnson, a stern-faced man with a gentle voice, was concluding the regular Sunday service. Most of the congregation stayed for the wedding, curious to see Sam Osborne's mail-order bride. As Beatrice walked down the short aisle on the arm of Thomas, the storekeeper who had volunteered to give her away, she caught sight of Sam standing at the altar. He wore a clean black suit that looked new, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. The look in his eyes as he watched her approach made her breath catch not desire, exactly, but something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Sam hesitated only a moment before leaning down to place a chaste kiss on Beatrice's lips. It was their first physical contact beyond a handshake, and Beatrice was surprised by the warmth that spread through her at his touch. The celebration afterward was held at the town's small hotel, where tables had been arranged in the dining room and loaded with food contributed by various neighbors. Beatrice was introduced to so many people that their names and faces blurred together, but everyone was welcoming. As the afternoon wore on, Beatrice found herself growing tired, the strain of maintaining a smile and making conversation taking its toll on her still healing body. Sam noticed her fatigue and quietly suggested they make their departure. "We should be getting back to the ranch," he announced to the gathering. "I've got animals to tend to, and my wife needs to rest after all the excitement." There were knowing smiles and a few good-natured jests that made Beatrice blush, but soon they were in Sam's wagon, heading back to what was now their home. The silence between them was comfortable rather than strained, both lost in their own thoughts about the step they had taken. When they arrived at the ranch, Sam helped Beatrice down from the wagon with the same careful gentleness he'd shown from the beginning. "Welcome home, Mrs. Osborne," he said softly. The use of her new name startled Beatrice, but not unpleasantly. "Thank you, Mr. Osborne," she replied with a small smile. Inside, Sam built a fire to ward off the evening chill while Beatrice removed her wedding bonnet and gloves. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "Mrs. Patterson sent along some food." "A little," Beatrice admitted, "but I can prepare something if you prefer." "No need. Today's your wedding day. You shouldn't have to cook." Sam moved about the kitchen with easy competence, setting out bread, cheese, and cold meat from the celebration. They ate at the kitchen table, the silence broken only by Buck's occasional snuffling as he lay hopefully at their feet. When they finished, Sam cleared the dishes, refusing Beatrice's offer of help. "You should rest," he said. "It's been a long day." The unspoken question hung between them. What happened now? They were legally wed, but both knew this was still essentially a relationship between strangers. "I'll be turning in soon myself," Sam continued, answering her unasked question. "Early mornings on a ranch." Beatrice nodded, relief mingling with a strange disappointment. "I'll say goodnight then." In her room, their room now, she supposed, though Sam had made no move to join her, Beatrice changed into her nightgown. Her wedding dress hung carefully on a peg, a tangible reminder that her life had irrevocably changed. She was just about to climb into bed when a knock sounded at the door. "Beatrice, may I come in?" Heart pounding, she pulled a shawl around her shoulders. "Yes, of course." Sam entered, still fully dressed but with his collar unbuttoned. He carried a small wooden box, which he set on the dresser. "I have something for you, a wedding gift." Surprised, Beatrice approached the dresser. The box was finely crafted, its lid inlaid with a pattern of leaves. "It's beautiful." "Open it," Sam encouraged. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft cloth, lay a silver hairbrush and mirror set. The handles were decorated with the same leaf pattern as the box, the silver polished to a high shine. "Sam," Beatrice breathed, lifting the brush reverently. "It's too much." "It was my mother's," he explained, "one of the few things I brought west with me. I've been saving it." Touched beyond words, Beatrice turned to face him. "Thank you, I'll treasure it." Sam nodded, his eyes dark in the lamplight. "There's something else, Beatrice. Something we need to discuss." Her stomach clenched with sudden anxiety. "Yes?" "I know someone hurt you." His voice was gentle but direct. "I saw the bruises the first day, when you got out of the wagon. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to embarrass you, but I need to know. Who hurt you?" Beatrice's hands trembled as she set the hairbrush back in its box. For a moment, she considered denying it, brushing off his concern with the same excuse she'd given Mrs. Patterson for the seamstress. But something in Sam's eyes, a mixture of concern and understanding, made her hesitate. "My cousin," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "After my father died, I had nowhere else to go. Edwin took me in, but he was cruel. When I got the chance to come west, to marry you, I took it. I had to escape." Sam's jaw tightened, a muscle working in his cheek. "Did he force himself on you?" "No," Beatrice said quickly. "No, it wasn't like that. He was just angry, all the time. I never knew what might set him off. A meal not to his liking, a floor not swept properly, a word spoken at the wrong moment." Sam's eyes closed briefly, as if her words pained him physically. When he opened them again, there was a fierce protectiveness there that made Beatrice's breath catch. "I need you to understand something, Beatrice," he said, taking a step closer, but still maintaining a respectful distance. "I will never hurt you. Not in anger, not in punishment, not for any reason. That's not what a man does to his wife." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes. "Mrs. Patterson told me about your sister." Sam's expression softened with sadness. "Clara. Yes. I was too late to save her, but I swore I'd never stand by while a woman was harmed again." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and gently took her hand. "You're safe here, Beatrice. I give you my word." A tear slipped down Beatrice's cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. Sam squeezed her hand once before releasing it. "I'll sleep in the other room tonight, and any night you wish. This marriage doesn't have to be conventional, unless we both want it to be." Relief and gratitude washed over Beatrice. "I think I'd like some time," she admitted. "Take all the time you need," Sam said. "We have the rest of our lives to figure this out." He stepped back toward the door. "Good night, Beatrice." "Good night, Sam." After he left, Beatrice sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the silver hairbrush. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not quite hope she wasn't ready for that yet, but perhaps the seeds of it. The next few weeks settled into a pattern as Beatrice adapted to life as a rancher's wife. Sam rose before dawn each day to tend to the livestock, while Beatrice prepared breakfast and packed his midday meal if he would be working far from the house. She spent her days learning the rhythm of ranch life, cooking, cleaning, mending, and slowly taking on more responsibilities with the chickens and garden. True to his word, Sam continued to sleep in the spare room, though they spent their evenings together by the fire, Sam often reading aloud from one of the few books he owned while Beatrice mended or knitted. Sometimes they simply talked, sharing stories of their lives before they met. Beatrice learned that Sam had come west at 16 after his parents died of influenza, working as a ranch hand until he could save enough to buy his own land. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Boston, her father's work as a clerk in a shipping office, and her mother's death when she was young. Slowly, the bruises on Beatrice's body faded, and with them, some of her fear. She still startled at sudden movements and apologized too quickly for minor mistakes, but less frequently as the days passed. Sam was unfailingly patient, his quiet strength a constant reassurance. October brought cooler weather and the cattle roundup. Sam was gone from dawn until well after dark for several days, working with neighboring ranchers to gather the herds for market. Beatrice worried about him working in the increasingly cold conditions but said nothing, understanding this was simply part of ranch life. On the fourth day of the roundup, a storm blew in unexpectedly, bringing driving rain and fierce winds. Beatrice paced the house anxiously, starting at every sound, praying for Sam's safe return. When Buck began barking frantically around nightfall, she rushed to the door to find Sam dismounting from his horse, soaked to the skin and shivering. "Sam!" she cried, hurrying out onto the porch. "Come inside quickly. You're freezing." He allowed her to lead him into the house, his usual self-sufficiency temporarily abandoned in the face of exhaustion and cold. Beatrice took charge, stoking the fire to blazing life and putting water on to boil. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," she said firmly. "I'll prepare a hot bath." Too cold to argue, Sam nodded and went to his room while Beatrice hauled buckets of water to fill the metal tub they kept for bathing. By the time Sam emerged in dry trousers and a woolen shirt, the bath was ready and the kitchen was warming from the heat of the fire and boiling water. "I've never been so glad to see 4 walls and a roof," Sam admitted, as he lowered himself into the steaming water with a grateful sigh. Beatrice had modestly turned her back, busying herself with preparing a hot meal, but she smiled at his words. "The storm came up so suddenly," she said. "I was worried." "Nearly lost 2 calves in the creek," Sam replied, his voice weary. "But we got them out. Anderson broke his arm when his horse slipped, though." "Will he be all right?" Beatrice asked, concerned. The Andersons were among their closest neighbors, their ranch about 5 miles distant. "Doc thinks so. He's young and strong." Sam was silent for a moment, then added, "It made me think, though. If something happened to me out there, you'd be alone here." Beatrice turned to face him, forgetting for a moment that he was bathing. Sam was submerged to his chest, his bronzed shoulders and arms visible above the water, his wet hair curling against his neck. The intimacy of the moment struck her suddenly, and she felt her cheeks flush. "I'm stronger than I look," she said, turning back to the stove, "and the neighbors would help." "Still," Sam persisted, "you should know how to use a rifle, at least for hunting, if not for protection. And I should teach you more about the cattle, the business side of things." The concern in his voice touched Beatrice deeply. Edwin had never worried about what might happen to her. In fact, he'd often threatened to turn her out with nothing. "I'd like to learn," she said softly. After Sam finished his bath and dressed in warm, dry clothes, they sat down to the simple but hearty meal Beatrice had prepared. Sam's hands were still cold, his movements stiff as he handled his fork and knife. Without thinking, Beatrice reached across the table and took his hands in hers, rubbing them gently to warm them. Sam froze, surprise evident in his eyes. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact between them. "Your hands are like ice," she explained, suddenly self-conscious but not releasing him. "You'll never warm up at this rate." A slow smile spread across Sam's face. "They feel warmer already," he said softly. They remained that way for a long moment, hands joined across the table, something unspoken passing between them. Then Sam gently squeezed her fingers before releasing them. "The food's getting cold," he said, "and you went to all this trouble." That night, as Beatrice lay in her bed listening to the storm howling outside, she found herself thinking about the look in Sam's eyes when she'd taken his hands. There had been surprise there, yes, but something else too, a warmth that had nothing to do with physical temperature. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that this marriage might become more than just an arrangement of convenience. The thought was both frightening and exhilarating. The weeks following the storm brought a shift in their relationship. Small touches became more frequent. Sam's hand at the small of her back as they walked from the barn, Beatrice's fingers brushing his as she passed him a cup of coffee, their shoulders touching as they sat by the fire in the evenings. Each contact was brief but meaningful, a gradual building of trust and comfort. True to his word, Sam began teaching Beatrice about the operation of the ranch. He showed her how to use the rifle, his hands steady as he guided her aim toward a row of bottles set up on the fence posts. He explained the ledgers where he tracked cattle sales and expenses, his patience never wavering when she struggled with the calculations. November arrived with its shorter days and longer nights. The first snow fell, transforming the landscape into a pristine wonderland that took Beatrice's breath away. Having spent her life in Boston, she was no stranger to snow, but there was something different about the vast white expanse of the prairie, untouched and pure. "It's beautiful," she breathed, standing on the porch one morning as dawn broke over the snowy fields. Sam, pulling on his gloves as he prepared to check on the cattle, paused beside her. "It is," he agreed, but when she glanced up, she found him looking not at the landscape, but at her, his eyes warm with admiration. Beatrice felt her cheeks flush with pleasure, and for the first time, she didn't look away from his gaze. Instead, she held it, letting him see the growing feelings she'd been trying to hide. Sam's expression softened, and he reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I'll be back by noon," he said, his voice husky. After he rode out, Beatrice pressed her fingers to the spot where he had touched her, her heart racing with a new and unfamiliar excitement. That evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Sam closed the book he'd been reading aloud and set it aside. "Beatrice," he said, his voice serious, "there's something I want to ask you." She looked up from her mending, noting the intensity in his expression. "What is it, Sam?" He shifted in his chair, uncharacteristically nervous. "We've been married over 2 months now, in name at least." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I want you to know that I'm content with things as they are, if that's what you want, but I find myself hoping for more between us." Beatrice's heart pounded in her chest. She'd been having similar thoughts but hadn't known how to express them. "More?" Sam met her gaze steadily. "I'd like us to be truly married, in all ways, but only if it's what you want too. I'll never press you or make you feel obligated." The sincerity in his voice moved her deeply. This was so different from what she had known with Edwin, where her wishes had never mattered. "I've been thinking about that too," she admitted softly. Hope flared in Sam's eyes. "You have?" Beatrice nodded, setting aside her mending and gathering her courage. "When I came here, I was broken in many ways, not just my body, but my spirit too. I didn't trust anyone, especially men." She took a deep breath. "But you've shown me what a good man is like, Sam. Patient and kind and honorable. You've given me time to heal, to find my strength again." Sam's face was solemn as he listened, his eyes never leaving hers. I think I'm ready for more too," Beatrice continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I've been ready for a while, but I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Sam asked gently. "Afraid that once you truly knew me, saw all my scars inside and out, you might regret your choice, that I might disappoint you." Sam rose from his chair and crossed to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. "Beatrice, look at me." She raised her eyes to his, vulnerable but trusting. "You could never disappoint me," he said firmly. "You're the strongest, bravest person I know. To survive what you did, to take a chance on a stranger, to build a new life thousands of miles from everything familiar, that takes incredible courage." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes at his words. "Thank you for seeing that in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself." Sam reached up to brush away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "I see you, Beatrice, all of you, and I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and powerful. Beatrice felt something shift inside her, the last wall around her heart crumbling away. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. Sam's smile was like the sunrise, gradual but transforming. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. Unlike the brief ceremonial kiss at their wedding, this one was real tender at first, then deepening as Beatrice responded, her hands moving to his shoulders. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing faster, their eyes bright with newfound understanding. "Will you come to my room tonight?" Sam asked softly. "Not for anything you're not ready for, but just to sleep beside me, to start truly being husband and wife." Beatrice nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. That night, for the first time, they shared a bed, lying face to face in the darkness, talking in whispers until sleep claimed them. Sam held her gently, his arms a shelter rather than a cage, and Beatrice marveled at how safe she felt, how right. In the weeks that followed, they grew closer in every way. Physical intimacy came gradually, with Sam always patient, always attentive to Beatrice's comfort and pleasure. She discovered a joy in their marriage bed that she had never imagined possible, her past fears replaced by trust and desire. As December brought the holiday season, Beatrice threw herself into creating a proper Christmas for their first year as a true couple. She baked cookies from her mother's recipes, fashioned simple decorations from pine boughs and ribbons, and secretly knitted Sam a warm scarf from wool she'd purchased on her last trip to town. On Christmas Eve, they returned from a gathering at the Pattersons to find their home warm and welcoming in the snowy night. As they stood by the fire, Sam presented Beatrice with a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Merry Christmas," he said, watching eagerly as she unwrapped it. Inside was a locket of polished silver, simple but beautiful. When Beatrice opened it, she found a tiny portrait of Sam on one side, the other empty. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Mrs. Patterson helped me arrange for the portrait when I was last in town," Sam explained. "I thought perhaps someday we might add one of you, or—" He hesitated, then continued softly, "or perhaps a child when the time comes." Beatrice looked up sharply, her heart skipping. "A child?" Sam's expression was tender as he took her hands. "I've been thinking about it, about starting a family together. If you want that too someday." The idea of having children had always been terrifying to Beatrice, given her experience with Edwin's violence, but with Sam, the prospect filled her with hope rather than dread. "I think I would like that," she said softly. "Not right away, perhaps, but someday. With you." Sam's smile was radiant as he fastened the locket around her neck. "Whenever you're ready, Beatrice. We have all the time in the world." As they stood together in the firelight, Beatrice marveled at how far she had come in just a few short months. From a frightened, bruised woman fleeing abuse to a confident, loved wife, building a future with a good man, the transformation seemed almost miraculous. "What are you thinking?" Sam asked, noting her thoughtful expression. "I was thinking about the day we met," Beatrice replied. "How terrified I was. How certain that I was jumping from one bad situation into another." Sam nodded, his expression somber. "I remember how you flinched when I tried to help you down from the wagon. It broke my heart, knowing someone had hurt you badly enough to cause that reaction." "And yet you never pushed," Beatrice said, reaching up to touch his face. "You gave me time, space, patience. You saw my bruises, and instead of turning away, you asked who hurt me and promised I would be safe." "I meant that promise," Sam said firmly, "and I always will." Beatrice stood on tiptoe to kiss him, pouring all her gratitude and love into the gesture. "I know," she whispered against his lips. "That's why I love you." Winter gradually gave way to spring, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the soil. With the changing season came a change in Beatrice as well, a fullness to her figure, a glow to her complexion, and occasional bouts of morning sickness that confirmed what she had begun to suspect. On a mild April morning, as they sat on the porch watching the sunrise, Beatrice took Sam's hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I think," she said softly, that we might need to make space for another Osborne by Christmas. The joy that spread across Sam's face was worth any discomfort she might face in the months ahead. He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of precious glass. "A baby," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." As Beatrice rested in her husband's embrace, watching the sun illuminate the land they had come to love, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The bruises that had once marked her body were long healed, the scars on her heart fading with each day in Sam's gentle care. In their place was something she had never expected to find when she stepped off that stagecoach in Julesburg, not just safety, but joy, not just escape, but home. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring and summer months. Sam became even more protective, insisting that Beatrice rest frequently and hiring a local girl, Jenny Wilson, to help with the more strenuous household chores. Despite her protests that she wasn't an invalid, Beatrice secretly appreciated his concern, so different from the neglect she had known in the past. By September, her condition was unmistakable, her belly rounded beneath her loosened dresses. Mrs. Patterson visited often, bringing baby clothes she had knitted and practical advice about childbirth and infant care. "You're looking well," the older woman commented one afternoon as they sat shelling peas on the porch. "Motherhood suits you already, and the child isn't even born yet." Beatrice smiled, resting a hand on her stomach where the baby kicked energetically. "I never thought I could be this happy," she admitted. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover it's all been a dream." Mrs. Patterson's expression turned serious. "It's not a dream, child. You've earned this happiness through pain and courage. Don't fear it, embrace it." That evening, as they prepared for bed, Beatrice shared these thoughts with Sam. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how much my life has changed in a year," she said as she brushed her hair with the silver brush he had given her on their wedding night. "Last September I was bruised and terrified, fleeing Boston with nothing but a valise and desperate hope." Sam came to stand behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "And now? Now I have everything I never dared to dream of. A home, a husband who loves me, a child on the way." She turned to face him. "I have you." Sam pulled her gently into his arms, mindful of her pregnant belly between them. "And I have you," he murmured against her hair. "My brave, beautiful Beatrice." As autumn painted the prairie in shades of gold and amber, Beatrice's time grew near. Sam insisted on having the doctor visit from town to check on her, and arrangements were made for Mrs. Patterson to stay with them when the baby came. On a crisp November morning, exactly 1 year after the first snow had fallen on their first season together, Beatrice went into labor. The pains started gradually, strengthening throughout the day until by evening she was confined to their bed, Mrs. Patterson and the doctor in attendance, while Sam paced anxiously outside the door. The labor was long and difficult, but Beatrice faced it with the same quiet strength that had carried her through all the challenges of her life. Shortly after midnight, as the first snowflakes of the season began to fall outside the window, her son was born a robust, healthy boy with a thatch of dark hair like his father's, and eyes that, when they briefly opened, showed hints of his mother's blue-green. "Samuel," Beatrice whispered when they placed the swaddled infant in her arms. "Samuel Thomas Osborne." When Sam was finally allowed into the room, his face was etched with worry and hope in equal measure. The sight of Beatrice, tired but radiant, holding their son, brought tears to his eyes. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Sam approached the bed with reverence, sitting carefully on the edge and reaching out a tentative finger to touch the baby's cheek. "He's perfect," he breathed, like his mother. "I named him Samuel," Beatrice said, "after his father. And Thomas for your father." Sam's eyes, when they met hers, were full of such love that Beatrice felt her heart might burst with happiness. "Thank you," he whispered, leaning forward to press his lips to her forehead. "For him. For everything." As the snow fell softly outside their window, blanketing the world in pristine white, the new family huddled together in the warmth of their home, a sanctuary built not just of wood and stone, but of patience, understanding, and love. Over the next 5 years, the Osborne Ranch prospered and grew, as did their family. Little Samuel, called Tommy to distinguish him from his father, was joined by a sister, Clara Rose, named for Sam's lost sister and Beatrice's mother. The children thrived in the clean air and wide-open spaces of the Colorado prairie, their laughter filling the ranch house that Sam had expanded to accommodate their growing family. Beatrice, too, flourished. No longer the frightened, bruised woman who had stepped off the stagecoach, she had become a confident ranch wife, respected in the community for her kindness and quiet strength. The skills she had learned out of necessity in those first months had become second nature, and she had developed new ones as well, riding astride rather than side saddle, helping with the spring branding, even learning to shoot with enough accuracy to hunt small game when needed. On a warm summer evening in 1881, as they sat on the expanded porch of their home, watching Tommy and Clara play with Buck's puppies in the yard, Beatrice leaned against Sam's shoulder with a contented sigh. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his arm tightening around her waist. "I was remembering something my father used to say," she replied. "Sometimes the longest journey is the one from fear to love." I didn't understand what he meant until I came here, until I found you. Sam turned to look at her, his eyes, still as blue as the day they met, crinkling at the corners as he smiled. The years of working outdoors had etched lines into his face, but to Beatrice, he was more handsome than ever. "I found you too," he said softly. "When you arrived with those bruises hidden under your dress, I was so angry at whoever had hurt you, but I was also grateful, in a strange way." "Grateful?" Beatrice questioned. "Grateful that you had found your way here, to Julesburg, to me." Sam took her hand, his thumb brushing over the simple gold band he had placed there 6 years before. "I know now that I was waiting for you, even before I knew you existed." Beatrice smiled, remembering the frightened young woman she had been, and marveling at the distance she had traveled, not in miles, but in spirit. "And I was looking for you, even when I didn't know it was you I needed." In the yard, Tommy called out excitedly as one of the puppies licked his face, his childish laughter blending with his sister's giggles to create a symphony of joy that filled Beatrice's heart to overflowing. Sam's lips found hers in a gentle kiss that still, after all these years, made her pulse quicken. "I love you, Beatrice Osborne," he murmured, "more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." As twilight settled over the Colorado prairie, painting the vast sky in shades of pink and gold, Beatrice rested in the circle of her husband's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together. The journey from mail-order bride with hidden bruises to beloved wife and mother had been long and sometimes difficult, but worth every step. The bruises that had once marked her body were long gone, the memories of pain faded like old photographs. In their place was the certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, home, with the man who had seen her wounds and helped her heal.